Imagine being a slave in 1781, owned by another man, with no freedom, no rights, and no voice. Now imagine walking straight into the enemy's military camp and convincing them to trust you. Imagine spying on the most powerful army on earth and feeding their secrets to the revolutionaries. And imagine that your intelligence becomes one of the key reasons the British Empire loses America. Yet history almost forgot his name. Not a general, not a president, not even a soldier. He was a slave-turned-double agent. Before we dive into the main story, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell notification button for more interesting video like this. A man who fooled the British commander Charles Cornwallis, worked secretly with Marquis de Lafayette, and helped deliver victory to George Washington. His name was James Armistead. But after the war, something shocking happened. Even after helping win America's freedom, he was still a slave. This is the incredible story of the spy who changed a war, but had to fight again for his own freedom. And the ending of this story? It will change the way you see the American Revolution forever. By the late 1770s, the American Revolution was hanging by a thread. The British Empire was the most powerful military force in the world. Its navy dominated the oceans. Its army was professional, disciplined, and experienced. Across the Atlantic, the colonies were fighting for independence. But the American army was poorly trained, poorly supplied, often starving. General George Washington knew something terrifying. If the British crushed the revolution soon, America would never exist. But wars are not won by armies alone. They are won by information. And the revolutionaries desperately needed spies. Around 1760, in Virginia, a boy named James Armistead was born into slavery. His life was controlled by his owner William Armistead. Like thousands of enslaved people in colonial America, James had no freedom. But he had something powerful: intelligence, observation, patience. In 1781, James did something extraordinary. He asked permission to join the American war effort, not as a soldier, but as a spy. He volunteered to work with the French commander fighting alongside the Americans, Marquis de Lafayette. Lafayette immediately recognized the opportunity. Because James could move in places others could not. British officers often ignored enslaved servants. They talked freely in front of them. And that made James the perfect spy. James Armistead walked directly into British territory. He pretended to be a runaway slave seeking protection. The British accepted him. In fact, they welcomed him. Because during the war, British commanders promised freedom to enslaved people who joined them. Soon James found himself inside the camp of one of Britain's most powerful generals, Charles Cornwallis. Cornwallis trusted him. He allowed James to work as a servant and messenger. But secretly, James was reporting everything. James Armistead didn't just spy. He became something far more dangerous. A double agent. He began feeding false intelligence to the British. At the same time, he secretly carried real intelligence back to Lafayette. Imagine the risk. If he were discovered, the punishment would have been brutal. Most likely, execution. But James continued. He listened carefully to British officers. He memorized troop movements. He observed supply routes. He even learned about Cornwallis' battle strategies. And then, he passed the information to Lafayette. By 1781, Cornwallis moved his army to Yorktown, Virginia. He believed it was a safe defensive position. But James Armistead discovered something crucial. Cornwallis was trapped. The British expected rescue from their navy. But the French fleet had blocked the sea. James quickly delivered the intelligence to Lafayette. That information reached George Washington. And Washington saw the opportunity. The American and French armies marched south and surrounded Yorktown. The Siege of Yorktown began. For weeks, artillery thundered. British defenses collapsed. And finally, on October 19, 1781, Cornwallis surrendered. It was the decisive victory of the American Revolution. The war was ending. America had won. The colonies were now the United States. Heroes were celebrated. Generals became legends. But James Armistead? He returned to Virginia. And something shocking happened. Despite risking his life for the revolution, he was still a slave. Because Virginia law said enslaved people could only be freed if they had served as soldiers. James had served as a spy. So legally, his freedom didn't count. But someone remembered his courage. The man who had sent him on the mission, Marquis de Lafayette. Lafayette wrote a powerful letter to the Virginia legislature. He praised James Armistead's intelligence work. He explained how critical the spy had been. And in 1787, the state finally granted his freedom. James adopted a new name. To honor the man who helped him, he became James Armistead Lafayette. After gaining freedom, James lived as a farmer in Virginia. He married. He raised a family. And he lived long enough to witness something incredible. In 1824, the aging Marquis de Lafayette returned to the United States as a national hero. Crowds celebrated him across the country. And among the people who came to greet him was James Armistead Lafayette. The two men embraced again. Spy and commander, freedom fighter and friend. James Armistead Lafayette died in 1830. But his story raises a haunting question. How many other hidden heroes helped shape history without ever being remembered? How many victories were won not by generals, but by people history almost erased? Because somewhere in the shadows of every great revolution, there are names we were never taught. Sometimes, the fate of nations rests not in the hands of kings or presidents, but in the courage of someone the world refuses to see. And that might be the most powerful secret in history. For more videos like this, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.